Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking one of the wildest, most intense multi-generational sagas ever put to paper, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. If you've ever been curious about the dark, stormy legends surrounding this classic, or you just want a clear breakdown of exactly what goes down on those harsh Yorkshire moors, you are in the exact right place. We're going to untangle this massive web of love, obsession, and vengeance. Let's get right into it.
So, imagine for a second dedicating your entire life to ruining not just one, but two entire families. What actually drives a person to do that? Well, to figure it out, we're heading back to late 18th century Northern England. The thing is, our story doesn't start with a clean slate. It begins with an outsider walking right into a house packed full of decades-old secrets.
Section 1. A dark Yorkshire estate.
Okay, so we actually enter the story through this guy named Mr. Lockwood. He's renting a neighboring property called Thrushcross Grange, and he decides to go introduce himself to his landlord, a man named Heathcliff, up at this forbidding estate called Wuthering Heights. But right away, Lockwood notices something is deeply, deeply off. He's greeted by snarling dogs, and the vibe in the house is just incredibly hostile and tense. He is totally unnerved, but also super curious. So what does he do? He goes to the housekeeper, Nellie Dean, and essentially begs her for the gossip. He asks her to explain the haunting past of his family, and she agrees to spill the history.
Section 2. Love, Status, and Betrayal.
Nellie takes us way back in time. The master of Wuthering Heights, Mr. Earnshaw, comes home from a trip with an orphaned boy they name Heathcliff. Earnshaw decides to raise him right alongside his own kids, Hindley and Catherine. But as you can probably guess, this doesn't exactly go smoothly. Catherine completely attaches herself to Heathcliff. They're like two wild spirits constantly running around the moors together. Her brother Hindley, on the other hand, absolutely despises the boy. He relentlessly bullies Heathcliff and treats him like dirt. And that unequal treatment? That is the exact spark that fuels Heathcliff's deep, burning resentment, as well as his desperate need to be worthy of Catherine.
Fast forward a bit as they grow up, and Catherine finds herself facing a totally impossible choice. On one side, you have Heathcliff. They have this profound, almost primal bond. But thanks to how he was treated, he has a very low social status. On the other side, you have Edgar Linton down at Thrushcross Grange. Edgar is basically the opposite of Heathcliff. He offers wealth, stability, and high society. It's the classic agonizing clash, raw, wild passion versus comfortable, high-status security.
So Catherine finally makes her decision, and it is a total catastrophe. She confesses to Nellie that she truly, deeply loves Heathcliff, but, and here's the tragic part, she's going to marry Edgar for the wealth and the status. But here is the worst possible twist. Heathcliff actually overhears part of this conversation. He bolts before he hears Catherine say that their souls are identical. He only hears the part where marrying him would degrade her. Believing the only person he loves has completely rejected him, he just runs away from Wuthering Heights into the night.
Section 3. A master plan of revenge.
So Catherine goes ahead and marries Edgar, but Heathcliff's departure, it was only temporary. He comes back years later and he is mysteriously wealthy, incredibly powerful, and out for blood. He has a terrifyingly precise two-pronged master plan for revenge. First, he targets his old bully Hindley. He manipulates Hindley into gambling away everything, eventually taking total ownership of Wuthering Heights. Then he sets his sights on Thrushcross Grange, planning to manipulate the next generation to steal that estate too. He wants to totally strip both families of their legacies.
Now, while Heathcliff is setting all these traps, Catherine is completely falling apart. Even though she's married to Edgar, she is still deeply tied to Heathcliff. His return brings this unbearable, toxic tension that just shatters her physically and psychologically. Her health rapidly declines, and tragically, she dies shortly after giving birth to her daughter, Kathy. So, the center of the storm is gone, right? But the storm itself is actually about to get a whole lot worse.
Because when Heathcliff finds out Catherine is dead, his reaction is honestly chilling. He is utterly devastated, but he doesn't pray for her to rest in peace. Instead, he literally curses her spirit. He begs her to haunt him forever. He flat out prefers the torture of her ghost over a world where she doesn't exist at all. It really shows you just how incredibly dark and twisted their connection was.
Section 4. The next generation suffers.
With Catherine gone, all the guardrails are off for Heathcliff. Over the years, his obsession just deepens.
First, he takes Hindley's son Hareton and intentionally leaves him completely uneducated and degraded, basically turning the rightful heir into a servant to avenge his own childhood. Meanwhile, Catherine's daughter, Cathy, is growing up sheltered over at Thrushcross Grange. But eventually the isolation breaks. Young Cathy crosses paths with the degraded Hareton, and also with Heathcliff's own incredibly sickly son, Linton. And just like that, the pieces for Heathcliff's final revenge are all on the board.
Heathcliff wastes no time. He ruthlessly forces young Cathy to marry his dying son, Linton. It's a calculated, brutal legal maneuver. Because of the property laws back then, when Linton dies shortly after the wedding, the trap fully snaps shut. Heathcliff gains absolute, total ownership of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. He did it. He achieved his ultimate revenge on paper, stripping both the Earnshaws and the Lintons of absolutely everything.
Section 5. Haunting and Final Piece.
But here's the really fascinating part. Getting everything he wanted brings this man zero comfort. None. He is entirely consumed by his obsession with Catherine. With nobody left to fight, he just becomes incredibly withdrawn. He stops caring about his properties, stops eating, stops sleeping. He starts having these intense visions of Catherine, just staring endlessly at places tied to her. He essentially starves himself, acting like he is eagerly welcoming death just so he can finally cross over to be with her.
The end comes pretty quietly. Heathcliff is found dead in Catherine's old bedroom, with the window flung wide open to the rain. But remarkably, he has this look of deep contentment on his face. It's as if, in those final moments, he was finally reunited with the ghost he begged to haunt him. And of course, local legends spring up almost instantly, with villagers swearing they can see the ghosts of Heathcliff and Catherine wandering those harsh Yorkshire moors together forever.
Now, contrast all that bitter history with what happens next. For decades, the past was just a toxic cycle of vengeance and obsession. But with Heathcliff gone, we actually see a new future emerge. Young Cathy and Hareton, despite everything Heathcliff did to pit them against each other, start to grow close. Their relationship represents real renewal. They literally break the cycle of trauma, showing that love and empathy can actually win out in the end.
We wrap up this explainer right where the story itself ends, with Mr. Lockwood looking down at the graves of Catherine, Edgar, and Heathcliff. He looks at the quiet landscape and imagines that they must finally be at peace. But it really leaves us to wonder. Considering the terrifying intensity of their love, the sheer depth of the hatred, and those persistent ghost stories, has true peace actually settled here? Or does that kind of dark, stormy passion just forever stain the earth? It is definitely a haunting thought to leave you with. Thanks so much for joining me on this dive into Wuthering Heights.